when a trembling little girl rushed into a small convenience store late in the evening, begging the solitary shopkeeper for help. He almost dismissed it as another frantic child lost in the bustle of daily life. But then she said one chilling sentence. Her father had killed her mother, and everything changed, cracking open the routine world he had known. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you believe in standing up for those who can't defend themselves, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Jack Calloway was 35 years old, a man who had inherited a modest convenience store in the peaceful town of Fairview. Locals knew him for his gentle disposition, though few could say they truly understood him. He moved through each day with a quiet routine, rising with the sun to unlock the store's front door, stocking shelves of snacks and canned goods, and arranging small displays of household items that folks always seemed to need. By the time the rest of town woke, he was ready for customers, offering them subdued nods of greeting, rarely venturing beyond surface-level chat about the weather. He lived alone in a tiny apartment above the store, with minimal furniture, a plain bed, a wooden table, and shelves of dusty books that he rarely read anymore. Solitude had become comfortable, even if it sometimes echoed with an emptiness he never openly acknowledged. On that pivotal evening, only a few stragglers trickled through the store, picking up last-minute items before dinner. Jack waited behind the counter, scanning a newspaper he had already read. He was preparing to close shop within the hour when a gust of wind caught the door, slamming it open. In rushed a girl about 10 years old, wide-eyed, breath coming in short gasps, hair tangled around her tear-streaked face. He froze mid-page turn, uncertain whether to speak or wait for her to collect herself. Something about her distress, so raw, so immediate, held him silent. "Please," she managed, voice cracking. "You have to help me." Jack set aside the newspaper, stepping around the counter. She wore a thin jacket, patches of dirt on her elbows, as though she had been scrambling through alleyways. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She swallowed, shaking. "Lily," she whispered, eyes darting to the windows as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "I can't stay long. My father, he'll find me." Jack's stomach nodded. His voice softened. "What's going on? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but tears filled her eyes. "He's going to kill me too, just like he killed my mom. I know he did." The words tumbled out in a rush, her body trembling with the weight of them. "Everyone says she ran away, but he heard her. He always heard her, and I heard them fighting, then she was gone." Jack's heart lurched. In quiet Fairview, such horrors seemed unimaginable. He looked around the shop's empty aisles, anxious that the father could appear at any second. He realized Lily stood close to collapsing, so he guided her toward a small stool behind the counter. "Sit," he said, voice calm, though inside he felt a surge of alarm. "I'm Jack. You're safe here." She clutched the stool's edge, glancing at the door as if it might explode open. "He'll come," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He always finds me. I only had time to grab my jacket and run when he left home. Please, you have to believe me." Jack found it hard to speak, adrenaline pounding. This was no ordinary lost child. She was accusing her father of murder. It sounded like the plot of a grim novel, yet there she was, flesh and blood, wide eyes filled with terror. "Let's slow down," he managed, adjusting his voice to be as reassuring as possible. "You're safe right now. Tell me more." As Lily recounted bits of her ordeal, her father's rages, bruises that never healed quite right, how her mother, Sarah, had vanished weeks earlier, Jack felt a quiet fury stirring. Children shouldn't bear such burdens. He believed her, or at least believed she believed it, and that was enough to act. He checked the store clock. It was nearly 7 p.m. The local school nurse, Mrs. Reynolds, was known for her compassion and quick thinking. She would know what to do more than anyone else in town, especially if the authorities needed to be involved. Jack reached for the phone, but Lily grabbed his wrist. "He'll stop you," she said, voice shaking. "He hates when I talk to anyone." "It's all right," Jack replied gently, removing her hand from his wrist but holding it in his own. "We'll call someone who can protect you." He dialed the local police station, only to realize that, at this hour, the shift might be short-staffed. After several rings, a recorded message directed him to an emergency number if it was urgent. Jack hesitated, wondering if this was indeed urgent enough. Lily's eyes pleaded with him. "All right," he said quietly, "we won't wait around. We'll do something." He set the phone down, deciding to take Lily to Mrs. Reynolds personally. The nurse, who lived near the elementary school, could contact Child Protective Services more effectively. And from there, the police would have to respond, even if they were understaffed. Jack locked up the store, flipping the sign to closed. He grabbed his coat, ushering Lily outside. The air was crisp, the sky colored by the last threads of twilight. He glanced up and down the street, half expecting a raging figure to appear. No one was there, only the quiet hush of a small town winding down for the night. Lily stayed close, her small footsteps unsteady. He led her to his old truck, parked around back. "Hop in," he said, forcing a gentle smile he didn't quite feel. She obeyed, eyes flicking nervously at every shadow. He started the engine, the rumble slicing through the silent alley. As they drove, Lily recounted more details in disjointed whispers. How her father, Ryan Warren, had grown ever more violent since her mother's disappearance. How Sarah had threatened to leave him after years of abuse, then vanished that same night. Lily was certain her mother was dead, but she had no proof beyond the bruises she herself had endured and the sinister look in Ryan's eyes whenever he mentioned Sarah. Jack gripped the steering wheel, mind racing. He barely knew Lily, yet the dread in her voice left no room for doubt. "We're almost there," he said quietly, spotting the street leading to the school nurse's home. Mrs. Reynolds, an older woman with a warm but no-nonsense approach, lived in a small house near the campus. Her lights glowed in the window. Jack parked by the curb and turned to Lily. "Let me do the talking at first, okay? Then you can tell her everything." Lily nodded, tears returning. Jack escorted her to the porch, rapping softly on the door. Mrs. Reynolds answered, surprise coloring her features when she recognized Jack. "Jack?" she said, eyes flicking to Lily's frightened face. "What's this about?" Jack's voice came out steady. "She's in trouble," he replied simply. "Her father might have done something terrible. I need your help." Without hesitation, Mrs. Reynolds ushered them inside. She guided Lily to a couch, fetched a blanket, and set a glass of water on the coffee table. Lily shook so badly her teeth chattered, but she managed to explain the bare bones of her situation: her father's abuse, her missing mother, her desperate flight. Mrs. Reynolds listened, lips tightening with concern. Once Lily finished, the nurse rose, grabbed the phone, and spoke with calm urgency to Child Protective Services. 10 minutes later, she called the police. "Yes," she said into the receiver, "the child is safe here, but we need immediate action. She believes her mother is dead. The father is still out there somewhere." Then she hung up, turning her stern gaze on Jack. "We'll keep her here until officials arrive," she declared. "But this is serious, Jack. You did right bringing her." Lily fidgeted, repeating, "He'll come. He'll know I told." Mrs. Reynolds crouched beside her. "We'll protect you," she assured. "No one's going to let him hurt you again." Lily's tears kept sliding down her cheeks, but she nodded, pressing her quivering lips shut. Jack felt a surge of relief that he wasn't alone handling this. He recognized that in a small town like Fairview, gossip and rumors spread fast, but sometimes official resources lagged. Having Mrs. Reynolds take the lead meant Lily had a voice of authority on her side. Child Protective Services arrived first, in the form of a tired-looking woman who introduced herself as Ms. Parker. She knelt in front of Lily, speaking in a soft tone, but Jack could tell she was no stranger to such heartbreaking stories. Lily repeated her claims, voice subdued, about believing her mother was murdered. Ms. Parker nodded grimly, promising that Lily would be placed in an emergency foster situation until the police could sort everything out. Then 2 officers showed up, a man and a woman, both in uniform, both wearing expressions that hovered between skepticism and concern. They asked Lily for any details that might confirm her suspicions. She had none. Just the bruises, the fights, the late-night screams. The female officer took notes, glancing occasionally at Jack to see if he had anything to add. He shook his head. She came into my store asking for help. That's all I know, he explained. I believed her because... He paused, glancing at Lily, whose face revealed sheer trauma. Because I had to. The male officer exchanged a glance with his partner. We'll do a wellness check at the father's home, he said. In the meantime, Ms. Parker, let's ensure the child is safe. The next hour turned into a tense blur as Lily was placed in a car with Ms. Parker. The officers set off to find Ryan Warren. Mrs. Reynolds, exhausted, turned to Jack. Go home and rest, she told him. You've done your part for now. We'll see what the morning brings. Jack nodded, a heaviness settling in his chest. Lily's pleading eyes haunted him as she drove away in that government car, huddled under a blanket. He prayed she wouldn't be lost in some bureaucratic shuffle. Still, at least now professionals were involved. He returned to his store, mind spinning with too many thoughts. Sleep came only in fragments that night, flashes of Lily's terrified face stirring him awake. In the days that followed, rumors spread throughout Fairview. Ryan Warren had vanished. The police suspected he might have fled once he realized Lily had come forward. A few neighbors whispered about constant late-night shouting in the Warren household. Others insisted Ryan wasn't capable of murder, just prone to outbursts. But the discovery that Sarah Warren was truly missing, her phone and belongings left behind, lent credence to Lily's fears. The police launched a preliminary investigation into Sarah's disappearance, eventually finding enough reason to treat it as a homicide case. The father was now a fugitive, his guilt almost confirmed by his flight. For Lily's part, Child Protective Services placed her with a temporary foster family. She refused to speak much, traumatized, though Miss Parker told Mrs. Reynolds that Lily had revealed further details. Black eyes hidden under makeup, broken furniture after violent rages, Sarah's vow to run away with Lily only to never return. The local news channels ran short segments about the missing mother, but Fairview's media presence was small. The story never hit national headlines, overshadowed by bigger city crimes. Nonetheless, townsfolk buzzed about how Jack had been the one to guide Lily to safety. He felt uneasy with the attention, turning reclusive, uneasy with praise. A week later, Ms. Parker called him, explaining that Lily wanted to see him. She had asked for him by name, a quiet anchor in the midst of all these new faces. Jack was surprised. He had hardly known Lily more than a few hours. Yet perhaps his calm presence in that terrifying moment had imprinted on her. Ms. Parker offered to arrange a supervised visit at the Child Protective Services office. Jack accepted. He found himself oddly eager to check on Lily, to be sure she was coping. The meeting took place in a small, beige room that smelled faintly of disinfectant. Lily sat on a plastic chair, eyes downcast until Jack stepped in. She looked up, relief and uncertainty mingling. "Hi," she managed quietly. Jack offered a gentle nod. "Hi, Lily," he said. He sat across from her, Ms. Parker seated to one side, pen poised on a notepad. "How are you?" She shrugged. "It's weird," she admitted. "I'm in this new house with people I don't know. They're nice, but..." Her voice trailed off and tears shimmered. "I miss my mom." Jack's throat tightened. He wanted to say something comforting but felt words would be hollow. So he just nodded, letting the silence linger until Lily continued. "I was afraid you wouldn't come," she said, twisting her fingers together. "Of course I'd come," he replied softly. "I was worried about you." She inhaled shakily, as though trying not to cry. "Thank you," she whispered. "You believed me, even though I sounded crazy." Jack's heart squeezed. He remembered that look in her eyes, pure terror at the store. "It's not crazy," he said. "You were brave." From the corner, Ms. Parker chimed in. "Lily, we're still searching for your father. The police think he's left Fairview. We want you to feel safe, so you'll remain in foster care while they investigate everything. But is there anything else you want to share with Jack or me?" Lily shook her head, hugging her arms around herself. "Just, thank you," she said again, eyes flicking to Jack. "I remember how you didn't call me a liar. Everyone else at school said maybe my mom ran off or maybe she's on vacation. They never listened." She paused, tears threatening once more. "She wouldn't leave me. She promised we'd go together if we ever left." Jack cleared his throat, fighting back emotion. "I'm so sorry," he murmured. "I can't imagine what you're going through. But you're not alone, okay? I'm here. Ms. Parker is here. The police are on your side." She nodded but remained unconvinced, fear etched in her young features. The visit ended with a tentative handshake, Ms. Parker gently placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. Jack left the building feeling a surge of protectiveness he hadn't experienced before. Something about Lily's plight resonated with the quiet longing in his own life. He found himself wanting to do more, though he wasn't quite sure how. Over the following weeks, the police uncovered partial evidence that pointed to Sarah's demise. They discovered traces of blood in the Warren home, matching her DNA. With Ryan missing, the suspicion escalated to murder. A warrant was issued for his arrest. Lily's status changed to that of a child victim in a major homicide investigation. The local authorities and a few state-level officers stepped in to help track Ryan's movement. Tip lines opened, leading to false sightings, each fueling Lily's nightmares. Meanwhile, Lily's foster situation stabilized. She moved to a caring family, the Rogans, who had 2 older children and experience with traumatized kids. Ms. Parker informed Jack that Lily attended therapy sessions, receiving gentle guidance for her grief and fear. "She mentions you," Ms. Parker told him once over the phone. "She sees you as someone who took her seriously when no one else did. She'd appreciate another visit if you have the time." Jack visited occasionally, bringing small tokens, like a sketchbook or a new set of colored pencils, since Ms. Parker mentioned Lily's interest in art. He saw her grow calmer under the Rogans' roof, though she still wore sadness like a second skin. She asked him about the store, about how business was. He chuckled softly, telling her it was the same old routine. She revealed shy smiles at times, the corners of her mouth twitching as if remembering something happy. It warmed his heart to see glimmers of hope. The townsfolk, who once praised Jack for his quick thinking, soon grew used to the story, and attention drifted to other matters. But Jack's focus remained. One crisp morning, after about 2 months, Ms. Parker informed Jack that Lily's therapy was progressing well, but nightmares persisted about Ryan's potential return. "She's terrified he'll find her, even though we have no leads on his whereabouts," Ms. Parker said. "She's convinced that if he comes back, he'll try to hurt her." Jack felt a cold stab of realization that Lily's dread might never fully abate unless Ryan was caught. And the police seemed stuck, with no fresh clues. Then, in a shocking turn, the authorities confirmed that Sarah's remains had been discovered on the outskirts of a neighboring county. A hiker stumbled upon partially buried bones that matched her dental record. The homicide case now had definitive evidence. The police upgraded their efforts to a full-blown manhunt for Ryan. Lily, upon hearing the news, fell into a deep grief, comforted only by the knowledge that her mother's fate, though horrifying, was no longer a question. She wept for days, skipping therapy, closing herself off. Jack visited, offering quiet presence. He found her in the Rogans' living room, curled on the couch with puffy eyes. She barely spoke. Eventually, she asked him, "Does this mean I'll never see her again?" Jack's heart twisted. "I'm afraid so," he said gently, tears in his own eyes. "But you'll carry her love forever." After that dark confirmation, the local press reported on Sarah's remains, fueling fresh urgency. Another wave of search efforts commenced. The FBI offered limited help, considering it a homicide suspect at large. By the third month, an out-of-state tip led to Ryan's capture in a remote motel. He was found hiding under a false name, presumably planning to flee even further. The news hit Fairview like a jolt of lightning. Lily's father was in custody, soon to face trial for murder. Lily, though haunted by the memories, breathed a small sigh of relief at hearing he was locked away. She continued with therapy, leaning on the Rogans' kindness, inching toward a life without daily fear. When the trial started, Lily's statements provided crucial insight. Her father's documented history of abuse, combined with the forensic evidence from the home and the site of Sarah's remains, made for a damning case. The jury found him guilty of second-degree murder, sentencing him to multiple decades in prison. Lily wasn't forced to testify in open court, thanks to recorded statements. Still, she trembled at every mention of Ryan, certain he'd find a way to come after her. Jack attended the verdict hearing, staying quietly in the back. When the gavel came down, the tension in his shoulders ebbed. Lily was safe, at least for the foreseeable future. The rest of the town celebrated closure, while Lily faced the long path of healing from the trauma. In the following year, Lily's life transformed. The Rogans officially adopted her, providing a warm, stable environment. She blossomed in therapy, discovering a talent for drawing. She poured out her nightmares onto paper, swirling dark shapes into brilliant colors, letting the images speak for her hidden pain. Teachers noted her quiet determination. She performed well academically despite the emotional scars. Jack, for his part, stayed in the background, present whenever Lily or the Rogans invited him. He'd bring them groceries at a discount, wave to Lily at the local library, or share a few kind words after a school art exhibition. Their bond grew as a quiet guardianship. Lily called him "my friend Jack," her lifeline from that terrifying night. She sometimes visited his store after school, browsing candy aisles, giggling about small jokes. Jack would slip her a free piece of gum, or restock her art supplies, content to see her lighter spirit. She told him about her new siblings, about the normalcy of household chores that felt so alien after years of chaos. Yet a shadow lurked. Lily's therapy sessions unearthed her deeply rooted fear. What if Dad escapes? He'd come for me. It was an irrational fear, Ms. Parker said, but not uncommon in traumatized children. People tried to reassure Lily that a prison break was unlikely. Jack tried too, but part of him understood her terror. He'd wake at night sometimes, imagining Lily's frightened expression if the unimaginable happened. And then the unimaginable did happen. Nearly a year after Ryan's sentencing, news broke of a prison riot in the facility holding him. Several inmates overpowered guards, creating mass confusion. Two escaped. One was Ryan Warren. The headlines struck Fairview like a thunderclap. People whispered in shocked tones, "Could he come back here? Is Lily safe?" The police and FBI launched an immediate manhunt, distributing Ryan's picture across statewide bulletins. The Rogans, petrified for Lily's safety, accepted round-the-clock patrol near their home. Lily, upon hearing the news, collapsed into sobs, feeling a year's progress unravel in an instant. Jack, frantic with worry, phoned the Rogans. Mr. Rogan answered in a tense voice, explaining the protective measures. Lily was terrified, hardly sleeping, expecting Ryan at any window. The authorities assured them they'd do everything possible, but no one could guarantee safety. Days passed, then a week. Clues emerged that Ryan might have crossed into a neighboring county, prompting an extensive search. Lily tried going to school, escorted by an unmarked police car, but fear gnawed at her. She barely ate, nightmares resurfaced. Ms. Parker suggested continuing therapy more intensively. The Rogans debated whether to send Lily out of state for a while, but the thought of uprooting her so drastically felt daunting. One midnight, the worst happened. Ryan found Lily. The circumstances unraveled with the kind of horror that redefines everyone's sense of security. The policeman stationed outside the Rogan house fell victim to a well-planned ambush. Ryan, cunningly hidden by darkness, knocked the officer unconscious. He slipped inside the house, found Lily's bedroom, and forced her to leave under threat. The Rogans awoke to muffled shouts, only to discover Lily gone, the officer out cold, the front door wide open. By the time the alarm spread, Ryan had vanished into the night with his daughter in tow. A wave of dread swallowed Fairview. Lily's worst nightmare had manifested. Ms. Parker wept openly at the news, and the local station scrambled to coordinate with the FBI. Jack learned of the abduction early next morning, courtesy of a panicked call from Mrs. Reynolds. "She's gone," the nurse gasped, voice quivering. "Ryan took her." Jack felt his blood run cold. He rushed to the Rogans' home, finding it swarmed by law enforcement. The father stood near the porch, shaking, trying to console a hysterical Mrs. Rogan. Lily's siblings were inside, stunned and crying. A detective barked orders into a phone, summoning more resources. Jack stood on the sidelines, helpless. His mind spun with memories of that first night Lily had run to him, begging for help. He had promised her safety, and now she was in unimaginable danger. The days that followed were a blur of frantic searches, tips, and heartbreak. The FBI circulated bulletins across multiple states. Roadblocks appeared on highways. Helicopters scanned remote areas. The entire region seemed on high alert, but Ryan stayed one step ahead, likely relying on the same cunning he used to vanish before. Lily's photograph dominated local newscasts, her innocent eyes stirring public outcry. Jack, unable to do much else, opened his store half-heartedly, mind drifting to the worst scenarios. He barely slept. Each ring of the phone sent fresh jolts of anxiety through him, hoping for news that Lily had been found safe. 48 hours after Lily's abduction, investigators got a break. A security camera captured what looked like Ryan's stolen vehicle near a remote forest area. A sign indicated a cluster of old cabins. The FBI quickly zeroed in on that location, forming a tactical team to approach. Jack, hearing the news from Ms. Parker, shut down his store midday, driving to the local station to glean updates. The tension was suffocating. Everyone who cared about Lily prayed that they'd find her alive. Ms. Parker confided to Jack that the FBI believed Ryan might be cornered but was armed and desperate. In the remote woodland, a standoff formed. Helicopters circled overhead. Tactical agents moved quietly through the undergrowth. They found a rundown cabin with a single vehicle parked outside, matching the stolen plates. The agent in charge, bullhorn in hand, demanded Ryan release Lily and surrender. Silence reigned until, from inside, Ryan's voice hollered that he'd kill anyone who came near. Lily's faint cries were heard. The negotiations began, the tension thick. Hours crept by as specialists tried to coax Ryan out. He shouted about conspiracies, about how Lily was his property, how he'd never give her up. She screamed in the background, pleas muffled. Night fell, the agents setting up spotlights around the cabin. Some tried to contact him by phone, only to be met with threats. Lily's sobs occasionally floated through the radio they'd slipped under the door, sending waves of anguish over the assembled rescuers. Then, in a chaotic burst of violence, Ryan fired shots toward the spotlights. Agents ducked for cover, returning warning shots. The standoff flared into an all-out confrontation. The bullet-riddled cabin wall splintered. Screams rang from inside. Fearing for Lily's life, the FBI team launched a tactical breach. They lobbed flash grenades, storming the cabin's entrance. In the confusion, more shots rang out. Ryan, cornered and frenzied, refused to drop his weapon, aiming it at Lily. The special agents unleashed a volley of bullets. When the smoke cleared, Ryan lay motionless, Lily pinned under a table, crying for help. The medics rushed in, extracting her, discovering she was bruised but alive. The dreaded father was dead, shot multiple times in the final exchange of gunfire. The official statement described a tense standoff that ended with the suspect's fatal shooting and the victim rescued. Lily was taken to a nearby hospital for evaluation. Ms. Parker alerted Jack the moment Lily was stabilized. He arrived to find the Rogans huddled in a waiting area, clutching each other, tears of relief and exhaustion marking their faces. Lily, sedated to calm her shock, had survived. The doctor said she was traumatized but physically unharmed aside from minor injuries and dehydration. When Lily woke, Jack was there with the Rogans and Miss Parker. She opened her eyes, tears instantly streaming as the memory of what happened assaulted her. "He's gone?" she whispered in a shaky voice, scanning the visitors' faces. "Yes," Miss Parker replied gently, stroking her hair. "He can't hurt you anymore." Lily let out a sob that turned into a gasp, a swirl of grief and relief. She reached for the Rogans, who enveloped her in trembling embraces. Jack stood at the edge, tears in his eyes as well. When Lily noticed him, she extended a hand. He stepped closer, pressing her small fingers in his. "I'm so glad you're safe," he whispered, voice choked. She closed her eyes, weeping. "I thought he'd kill me like he killed my mom," she stammered. "I was so scared." Jack couldn't respond for a moment, his own tears threatening to fall. At last he managed, "He's gone, Lily. He can't come back. You're free." The next hours and days blurred again in a swirl of medical checks, therapy consults, and official statements. Ryan's death closed the final chapter of Lily's ordeal, removing the shadow that had haunted her for a year. Jack visited her in the hospital daily, quietly offering support. She clung to him at times, the same way she had that first desperate night in his store, seeking a calm presence amid chaos. He realized, with a fierce sense of gratitude, that he had become part of her life, no longer just the shopkeeper who had believed her, but a steadfast friend. The final 25% of the story brought resolution. Lily, though shaken by her abduction, felt a great weight lifted. With Ryan truly gone, she no longer worried about him lurking in every corner. She returned home to the Rogans, who shielded her from intrusive media. Ms. Parker helped arrange deeper therapy to process the abduction. Over time, Lily found a cautious peace, acknowledging that while the scars remained, she was now safe to embrace the present and dream about a future. Jack, after the dust settled, discovered a quiet sense of fulfillment in having played a role in Lily's rescue, twice in a way. He spent more time with the Rogans, forging an extended family dynamic. Lily's therapy progressed, allowing her to reclaim the joys of childhood. Laughing at silly jokes, painting bright pictures instead of dark ones, forging friendships at school without constantly looking over her shoulder. A month later, Lily visited Jack's store on her own for the first time since the abduction. She walked in, blinking at the familiar fluorescent lighting and shelves of mundane goods. He was behind the counter, tidying up. Seeing her safe, unafraid, nearly caused him to tear up again. "Welcome back," he said softly, rummaging in a candy jar. "I've got some new flavors if you want to pick one." She smiled, that shy, warm expression that had once been masked by desperation. "Thank you, Jack," she replied. "For everything. And for believing me when no one else did." He handed her a small chocolate bar, heart brimming with gentle pride. "It's the least I could do," he said, "but I'll always be around if you need a friend." She nodded, unwrapped the chocolate carefully. For a moment, they stood in companionable silence, the hum of the store's lights the only sound. Then Lily turned, a flush of old sorrow in her eyes. "Sometimes," she admitted quietly, "I still have nightmares. But it's easier now to wake up and remember he can't come after me." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're allowed to take as much time as you need to heal," he said. "You're safe here in Fairview, and you've got people who love you." She gave a small, brave grin. "Yeah," she murmured. "I guess I do." And so life continued. Lily, guided by the Rogans' steadfast love, Ms. Parker's guidance, and Jack's quiet support, forged a new normal. She focused on her art, sometimes bringing small canvases to Jack's store to show him. He'd praise her skill, watch her transform pain into creativity. The store customers, occasionally recognizing Lily from the news, offered kind words or discreet admiration of her resilience. She grew bolder, entering an art contest at school, winning second place with a painting that featured a figure wrapped in gentle arms, an abstract tribute to the safe harbor she found in her darkest hour. Jack, for his part, came out of his shell. He realized the satisfaction of forging human connections, no longer content to live in solitary routine. He joined a community group that funded scholarships for vulnerable youth, inspired by Lily's story. Occasionally, he'd close the store early to volunteer at local events. He found that caring for Lily reminded him that his lonely existence didn't have to remain so. In small ways, he expanded his circle. The townsfolk noticed he spoke more, offered more than polite nods, even cracked the occasional joke. As Lily approached her 12th birthday, the Rogans planned a celebratory party, a testament to how far she had come. Jack arrived with a gift of new paintbrushes, each handle carved with tiny flowers. Lily's face lit up. "They're beautiful," she breathed. "I'll paint something special, just for you." He ruffled her hair gently, smiling as she bounced away to show her new siblings. Ms. Parker, standing nearby, caught Jack's eye with an approving nod. The nurse, Mrs. Reynolds, joined too, carrying homemade cupcakes. Fairview might have been a quiet town overshadowed by that dreadful father's crime, but the love and support that blossomed afterward underscored a deeper truth. Compassion could mend even the deepest wounds. In the final, short paragraph, Lily felt peace spread through her as she realized that Ryan was truly gone, that no matter what nightmares might surface, she had a future brimming with hope. Jack, watching from a distance, felt his own heart lighten. Their bond, forged in crisis, had grown into a steady pillar in her life. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already and subscribe for more.